Não dita se por tu vetëm vesja sangue. Se spomëdhimet as pasumia, as shtëpinë, vetëm ato ta kisha marrë me veti. Si pikë e parë që ton thuj, kur kom hyp në kerr, që ja kom kthy shtëpinë në Kosovës. Vetëm shpirti i saj që edhe djalim ka me ta mon jetim.
Albanian hospitality is helping the Gashis and Halitis to recover. But their journey is not over. They say they will never settle in exile. They must go home, and their ideal of an independent Kosovo has now become an imperative.
Stärkt die NATO unterdessen ihre Truppen. Die USA wollen nach der Stationierung von 24 Apache-Kampfhubschraubern ihre Bodentruppen um 2000 Mann aufstocken. Die Soldaten sollen die Helikopter schützen und unterstützen. Mit den Apache will die NATO jugoslawische Panzer im Kosovo beschießen. Außerdem plant das westliche Militärbündnis, Raketenwerfer, eine Artilleriebatterie und gepanzerte Fahrzeuge nach Albanien zu verlegen. Der Internationale Währungsfonds hat Albanien großzügige Hilfe zugesagt. Generalsekretär Kam Dessu erklärte nach einem Gespräch mit dem albanischen Präsidenten Mejdani in Washington, die Unterstützung solle entsprechend den Bedürfnissen Tiranas fortgesetzt werden.
Die am Eingang der Moschee sind verdreckt vom Schlamm. 10 Tage sind diese Kosovo-Flüchtlinge zu Fuß durch Regen und Schnee gegangen. Die rund 100 Bewohner aus Lubiste haben in 2 Räumen der Moschee von Lopkovo Unterschlupf gefunden. 20 Kilometer entfernt der mazedonischen Hauptstadt Skopje. Wir können nicht zurück in unsere Häuser. Wir sind froh, dass wir am Leben sind. Wir dachten, wir werden getötet. Da ist überall so viel Polizei. Den letzten Weg mussten sie 12 Stunden lang durch Wälder gehen. Da sie ein Gebiet passierten, das überwiegend von Serben bewohnt wird, hatte die mazedonische Polizei ihnen geraten, den Schutz der Wälder zu suchen. Mazedonien und seine überfüllten Flüchtlingscamps sind nicht gerade das gelobte Land. Aber viele vertriebene Kosovo-Albaner haben keine Wahl. Der Kampfgeist hat auch diese Flüchtlinge noch nicht verlassen. Wir wollen nicht nach Deutschland oder in die Schweiz. Wir wollen nicht in ein Camp. Wir wollen zurück in unsere Häuser. Und Mazedonien verunsichert der Flüchtlingsstrom immer mehr. 170.000 haben sich hier inzwischen einquartiert und keiner weiß, wie lange.
Hungary, where there are pipelines coming through Hungary to go down to the Pančevo refinery at Belgrade. They've said they will cut the pipelines and stop those going through. So it is a much better situation. The only main area for oil to come through is ports down in Montenegro.
Let's talk about the practicalities of this at sea. As they walk slowly across the border in pouring rain, these men told a different story. They're some of the 70 men rounded up by the Serbs at villages near here, taken from their wives and their children and bused to the border. Separated from their loved ones, who are now trapped behind Serb lines for no one knows how long.
Why women and children? Now, the whole pattern before has been the women and children to come and the men to be left behind, and then the men either killed, perhaps, or used as soldiers, used as fodder for the war. What are they going to do with the women and children? It's a great puzzle, but it's also, of course, great anxiety.
Every time they cross, there's the search for missing family. For 6 days, Tony Pertini's been trying to trace his parents.
You know, the first day I came here, I cried so much, and now I have no tears to cry. I know, I just wait and wait, and I hope also. I mean, I must hope.
For nearly 2 weeks, there's barely been a break in the weather. Every new influx brings with them reports of refugees who've died on this forced march from southern Kosovo. They face appalling brutality by Serb troops on the march to this border. But if the weather continues like this, it could pose an even greater threat to their lives. Peter Sharp, Sky News, on the Albanian-Kosovo border.
Leeds is the first glimpse the 145 refugees, mostly women and children, are likely to get of the country that for the next weeks or months at least is going to be their home. And this is what they've left behind. Some have seen their men led away to an uncertain fate, Some of the women have been raped. All have lost either members of their family, friends, or both.
We're planning for the long term, but hoping that they will go back sooner than that. But we need to, we don't have any control over what happens in the region, of course, and we need to, they have exceptional leave to remain to stay in the country for a year, and we need to kind of plan on that basis. If they go back, where they want to be is back home with their families, in their own country.
Britain has been criticised for not accepting as many refugees as other European countries. Germany has welcomed 10,000. However, the UNHCR has requested a further 400 refugees be allowed into Britain in the next few days. Amnesty International has described the UK's commitment as shameful. The details of where the refugees will be accommodated are being kept secret to protect the group's privacy, but their first stop will be the St James Hospital, where they'll be given any medical attention they need. Few have serious medical problems, but all are badly traumatised by their experiences. Joanne Shoebridge, Sky News.
Of the conflict. NATO aircraft and missiles were again in action overnight. The authorities in the southern city in Serbia of Niš said a total of 26 missiles hit the city, causing immense material damage. Meanwhile, the United States has ordered the deployment of 2,000 extra troops and more tanks and artillery to Albania. An oil embargo on Yugoslavia has just one element of a 17-point statement on Kosovo issued at NATO's 50th anniversary summit in Washington.
Some of the pomp remains at the NATO summit, but this White House dinner was to have been black tie. The bombing changed the tone and the dress code. The message of the day was unity and resolve, and even over dinner, NATO's chief was still working hard to keep the alliance tight.
Word of thanks is to all of you, to the leaders of the different countries of the alliance that have decided to go together not only to proclaim principles, but to defend principles.
NATO leaders emerged from a closed-door session on Kosovo with a promise to increase military and economic pressure on Yugoslavia. But their statement was as interesting for what it excluded as what it included. There was no mention of the contentious issue of ground troops. The question dominates discussion here, but is still too divisive for a formal resolution.
I think we've made quite clear what our position is in terms of ground forces. We don't favor them in a non-permissive situation, and that's as far as I'm going to go.
Alliance leaders also visited Capitol Hill to press their case. Congressional support is crucial, but some congressmen are grumbling about the bill. Tony Blair has appealed to Americans to stay involved. To the surprise of many here, he's emerged as the leading hawk of this summit. Saturday's agenda includes other issues, but the Balkans are dominating the meeting.
It's been a desperate journey, and one not all survived. But these refugees were finally making it to some sort of sanctuary. Chased out of Kosovo, some were then stuck without food and shelter just inside the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. The aid agencies couldn't respond quickly because the road leading to where they were touched Serbian territory. These refugees gave up waiting, but were only able to move on to here in Lipkovo after being forced by the Macedonian army to travel for hours over the hills. It has been a painful path to safety, and many brought with them disturbing stories about the day the Serbs came knocking on their door.
We were expelled by the Serbs. They shelled us and they killed people. They forced us out of our homes, and we went to the border on foot.
In the southern Albanian town of Vlore, the ground is being prepared for a camp. Albania is having to deal with the bulk of the 600,000 plus refugees that have fled Kosovo. And at the request of the authorities, refugees are being taken to places like Vlore, away from the crowded and potentially dangerous northern base of Kukez. It is hoped that for now there is a better life here for those forced out of their homes and their country. These are some of the conditions they left behind in Kukez. The weather has been another reason why refugees are being urged to move. But at least 100,000 are estimated to still be there. The United Nations has appealed for more money from the West to...
Winning, he's losing, and he knows it. In the statement issued by the summit on Friday, NATO said it would intensify its military and economic pressure on Yugoslavia. But NATO also issued a peace proposal based on a suggestion made by Germany's Foreign Minister Joschka Fischer last week. It offers a swift ceasefire if President Milosevic agrees to NATO demands and withdraws his troops from Kosovo. Otherwise, the bombing will continue.
I would like also to emphasize that the leaders continue to be enormously concerned about the humanitarian situation. The humanitarian situation outside Kosovo, with the thousands of refugees which are already expelled from the country, and also for the humanitarian situation of the people.
But despite the Kosovo crisis, NATO members did find time to celebrate 50 years of cooperation.
Agency Tanjug, Mr. Milosevic was speaking at a meeting of senior government officials. The gathering was told that the serious humanitarian situation in Kosovo had been caused by NATO bombing, an allegation which has already been denied by NATO. Well, at the moment, the NATO leaders on day 2 in Washington are in closed session, and the Alliance's Secretary General Javier Solana said today's leaders must keep faith to the vision of the original signatories of the North Atlantic Treaty.
We have a duty to our publics to show that the same vision today, to look ahead and plan for the future, even as we confront in Kosovo a stern challenge to security, stability, and well-being in Europe.
The Serbs came to our town, Ljubista, and killed 3 people. Then they came to our houses and said, "If you stay, we will kill you too." So we left.
The Serbian version of events is quite different. At a cabinet meeting on Saturday, President Milosevic again blamed NATO for the stream of refugees into neighboring Albania and Macedonia. He says NATO bombing is the reason they left and is also now preventing their return home. But it's not likely the refugees will go back even if the bombing stops. Most are trying to put more distance between themselves and the border. They say they don't feel safe here.
Seite der Grenze an und mussten ihren Weg dann zu Fuß fortsetzen. Um die Situation in den Flüchtlingslagern zu entspannen, sind für morgen weitere Evakuierungsflüge nach Österreich, Frankreich und Spanien geplant.
Flüchtlinge erreichten heute wieder den Grenzübergang nach Platze. Die Menschen wurden zwischen Pristina und der mazedonischen Grenze gesammelt und per Zug transportiert. 3-mal haben die Serben einen davon zurückgeschickt, weil die Flüchtlinge keine Pässe hatten. 48 Stunden nur können sie hier im Übergangslager Platze bleiben. Dann müssen sie wieder weiter in andere Camps. Wohin, weiß keiner. Stenkovic 2 ist auf jeden Fall randvoll mit 27.000 Menschen. Eine Zeltstadt, in der man jetzt langsam versucht, die hygienischen Verhältnisse in den Griff zu bekommen. Die Latrinen, ein Bretterboden mit einem Loch in der Mitte, verschwinden. Chemische Klos sollen sie ersetzen. Doch auch wenn sie täglich gereinigt werden, die Masse ist zu groß. Durchfallerkrankungen an der Tagesordnung. Daneben wird gewaschen und Wasser geholt. Nur eine Frage der Zeit, bis das Grundwasser durch die Latrinen verseucht ist. 3 Wochen Lagerleben. Auch die physische Verfassung der Menschen wird immer schlechter. Heißes Wasser gibt es nur durch selbstgebastelte Lagerfeuer. Dosen und Plastikflaschen werden zum Warmmachen benutzt. Und dann kommt noch der Konkurrenzkampf der Hilfsorganisationen untereinander dazu. Während die einen mehr Zelte errichten wollen, Erweiterung des Hospitals, Dritte für die dringende Schaffung einer Schule.
Nass bis auf die Haut, durchgefroren und völlig erschöpft, so wurden sie heute früh südlich von Brindisi gefunden. Viele alte Menschen, Kinder, ja sogar Säuglinge, Polizei und Sanitäter versorgen sie noch am Strand mit trockenen Kleidern. Mit Booten wie diesem waren sie in der Nacht von Albanien nach Italien gebracht worden. Der Zustrom hat in den letzten Tagen wieder zugenommen. Die italienischen Behörden patrouillieren jede Nacht vor der Küste. Mit Radar versuchen sie, die Boote der Scafisti, der Schmuggler, ausfindig zu machen. Infrarotaufnahmen aus einem Polizeihubschrauber. Bis zu 50 Menschen sind in den Schlauchbooten zusammengepfercht. Mit 70 Stundenkilometern rasen sie nachts über die Adria, knapp 2 Stunden von Albanien nach Italien. An der Küste angekommen, müssen die Flüchtlinge durch das Wasser an den Strand warten. Erst wenn sie in Sicherheit sind, nimmt die Polizei die Jagd auf die Scafisti auf. Ihnen drohen für den Menschenschmuggel bis zu 12 Jahren Haft. 1000 bis 2000 Mark hat jeder der Flüchtlinge für die riskante Überfahrt gezahlt. Ihre Reise endet zunächst in Auffanglagern wie diesem kirchlichen Haus. Hier bleiben sie ein paar Tage, erhalten eine provisorische Aufenthaltsgenehmigung und werden dann auf Unterkünfte in ganz Italien verteilt.
Tons of humanitarian aid from across Europe is stranded on the dockside at Durrës. Much of it perishable foods. Customs officials here say it can't be delivered to the Kosovo refugees because the drivers don't have the correct documentation. Some truckers have been held here for a week. They say all their papers are in order.
We have at least 6 more loads sitting up in Fleetwood in England, and we were supposed to go back and bring more loads down. I'll not be coming down again, not to sit here for 3 days, a week, or whatever it takes.
I have 8 tons of cake mix and bread mix, 3 tons of baby food, the little glass jars, baby milk, sugar, cakes on the back ready for eating now, baby clothes, beds, blankets, sleeping bags, everything. There's nearly 20 tons of goods on the vehicle.
Which are needed in the refugee camps and not at the port at Durrës.
That's correct. Everybody out there needs the goods, but the Albanian government doesn't not want them to have it.
Everybody at home has put in so much work to get us here. I know some guy just won't stamp the little bit of paper that lets me out of the dock.
The lorry drivers, who are all unpaid volunteers, see the note on the customs office wall saying they have favoured status as a sick joke. But the man who's in charge stands by his decision to hold up the life-saving cargo.
I do hope they do not get as upset, because the countries where they come from, like Germany, Holland or United Kingdom, there are rules and regulations that they very well know that you should obey. And exactly as in these countries you have rules to follow, we have rules as well to follow and respect.
Tensions are running high. Some drivers are refusing to allow other port users through until they can get out themselves.
You've been here 5 days. Then I'll move my truck over, and you can go. When I go, you go.
Even international medical crews are being held up by the Albanian red tape. Not surprisingly, the lorry drivers are becoming increasingly angry. There are no sanitation facilities here, and there are fears that that could lead to health problems if they don't move soon. The only people getting out of here, according to the truck drivers, are those prepared to pay large bribes to the guards on the gate. David Bowden, Sky News, Durrës Port in Albania.
This will be the first sight the refugees will have of the UK. Up to 160 women and children due to be flown into Leeds Bradford Airport from Macedonia.
The government have been overwhelmed with the generosity of local authorities' response throughout the country, but we are ready to go now.
It's a fortnight since the Home Office asked local authorities to prepare contingency plans. Oldham was the first to respond with offers of flats and family homes. Till Tuesday it was understood the refugees would be flown into the northwest, but on Thursday Leeds was told to prepare reception centres, medical teams and counsellors.
A mad rush for a possible way out. Refugees grab registration cards for Spain at the Stankovic II camp in Macedonia. Just wait, says an official, form a line. In this camp, it's a desperate scramble for nearly everything. If they take me to Spain, says this professor, I will go. It's better than here. This mother is also looking for a better home for her 4 children. I would go anywhere, she says. We are stuck in the mud here. My kids are sick. I want any way out. Stankovic is packed with 16,000 refugees. It's been open for only 3 weeks, and officials say it's overcrowded. U.S. Army tents were set up this weekend to help ease the massive human burden. Each tent holds up to 100 refugees, and for now, this is home.
Everyone here has the clothes on their back. Some have an extra piece of luggage, but that's about all. Behind them, they leave houses and cars and lives.
They've come from a European-style home, and now they've got their entire extended family in one 4-metre square tent, and that's very difficult.
Still, the struggle for a life of dignity is ongoing. A volleyball court was installed Saturday. Haircuts continue in the afternoon sun. 2 small kiosks were opened. Refugees can now buy cigarettes and snacks. But the flow of refugees is nowhere near an end. Officials say at least 2,000 more cross into Macedonia Saturday. And as thousands come, only a few hundred leave. This man is headed for France. My mother is sick. My son has a broken leg, he says. The Serbs have stolen our money. They've stolen everything from us. About 180 Kosovar Albanians left for Paris early Saturday, leaving their camp behind, but not their life as a refugee.
Bus is leaving. Do you think you will be back?
I think so. I hope so, as soon as possible.
Bill Hemmer, CNN, at the Stankovic II refugee camp, Macedonia.
There's plenty of food in these camps, but thousands of refugees are still hungry for information. Radios and newspapers are a vital lifeline to friends and family still inside Kosovo. I want to know everything, says Shefcet Bitucci. My wife's family is there, and my brothers and cousins are KLA fighters, and I don't know if they're dead or alive. Relief workers estimate 25% of refugees have radios. And now, for the first time ever, Albanian reporters and aid agencies are preparing a broadcast specially tailored for refugees.
The mothers may not be producing enough milk because of, tremendous stress, and it's important that they get messages about the fact that this is normal and it will pass.
What may not pass so easily is the deep depression and trauma many children are sinking in. Relief workers say half of the 350,000 refugees in Albania are children. Many of them have been scarred by war, and to help them heal, to allow them to express themselves, the United Nations is now starting a newsletter. The newsletter will be written by teenagers themselves.
It's also very healing for the community when teenagers, when children are given a space to speak and tell the story from their own perspective. There is no child who wants war.
Faze Castrati hates war just as much. Her husband lost part of his leg in a Serbian attack, she says, and two of her daughters, Hadia and Shifkia, are still in Kosovo. We're always thinking about them, Castrati says, but my heart says they may have been massacred. On this day, as the first broadcast for refugees hits the airwaves, Bitucci, Castrati and others tune in. Many here say they'll miss a meal, but they'll never part with their radios. They're only linked to their past and their families. Satinder Bindra, CNN, Tirana, Albania.
Still to come in a special...
They will do everything for the integrity of our country, for the integrity of Albania. But at the same time, I can emphasize that the presence of NATO inside Albania, but in our region also, is a factor of peace, of stability, security, and of democratic development, and we appreciate too much this.
There is much discussion about how this war will proceed. Already there are NATO troops on your soil. There are Apache helicopters operating from Albania. There are 2,000 more troops coming in to accompany those helicopters. Would your country allow NATO to use its soil if it decided it wanted to launch a more vigorous campaign, a ground campaign, or a dramatically escalated war of any kind?
The answer is a strongly yes, and we will respond to what I've mentioned before. We respond positively to any other demand of NATO, because we see that this victory is important not only for Albania, for Albanian people, for Albanian nation, but also for the future of the world, for the future of humanity. We consider this clearly.
Is it inevitable?
All we have tried to find a peaceful solution. All who have worked for this agreement in Rambouillet, and during this time when we have worked for this peaceful agreement, this machine of crime and war was prepared to realize this policy of ethnic cleansing and genocide inside Kosovo. And during this time, Milosevic sent more than 40,000 troops in and around Kosovo, more than 300 tanks and other armored vehicles. It means that he was trying to realize what is planned and programmed quite well 1 year ago through this plan with code name Orshu, or in French, Feracheval. And what he's doing now, it was planned before. And what he's doing now is done also during this 9 years in the former Yugoslavia.
So the leaders who've gathered here, the leaders of the 19 NATO nations, you say, are going to be sending their armies into Yugoslavia sooner or later to fight?
I will answer in a different way. I can say that all these leaders has emphasized clearly their unity and determination to earn this war, to have a victory, a clear one, against this policy, which is quite old now for the world. And I think all have understood that it is important.
Of deep...
High overhead, the planes that were supposed to be their salvation. But on the ground in Kosovo Saturday, more burning houses. And at the border, every day, this. Some the strong who've survived the trek and weeks in freezing woods and mountains. Some the lucky, able to come by train and bus. So how does it go with the strong and the lucky, now among people who care?
What we see generally is that the situation people arrive in is vastly deteriorating. The longer this lasts, the worse it will be getting.
But at Stankovets camp, they're bracing for what they think will be 30 to 50,000 more refugees.
I expect them not to be in a good condition, and especially the mental situation for them, the hopelessness, having to leave, and all they have the story.
A Kosovar volunteer taking a medical census hears a lot about mental problems already.
They are in a big depression. And they are asking me to give them the answer about them or something like that, but I can't help them in that way.
Their main problem is a problem of stress, and they are very tired physically and mentally.
This woman has had her toes amputated after 5 days traveling through the snow. But there are worse things to lose. Minds wandering, vacant stares. If these are the strong and the lucky, what of the weak and the unlucky? The NATO allies say they can keep on bombing for as long as it takes.